All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Demand Gen Summit, Spring 2021. I'm here with Professor Oldroyd, who's currently teaching at BYU. And yeah, we're excited for the entire summit. We have like 37, 38 speakers who will be presenting over the next 4 or 5 hours today. And all those will be available on demand afterwards. And today, me and Professor Oldroyd are just going to be going over some of the results from the survey we sent out to everyone. It will be a full study here once we get all of the results, but this is just kind of a preliminary thing. So yeah, I'm here with Professor Oldroyd. Like I said, he's currently teaching at BYU. He's a professor of strategy and international business. He received a PhD from Kellogg School at the Northwestern University in Chicago. Former faculty fellow at MIT. He taught at University of North Carolina. He taught in Korea and India. So yeah, I just like to welcome Professor Oldroyd.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Professor Oldroyd is going to help us go through here and just kind of interpret all this data. He has a lot of research experience in marketing and sales. So he's going to help us out. So let me get this up here. So this is the first Demand Gen study that we have done so far. This is going to be a twice-a-year event, though. So in the fall, later this year, we will have another one so that we could have these metrics twice a year and keep everyone updated on this stuff. We have had 600 respondents so far. We'll probably have around 900-ish by the time we close it up. We're going to keep it running through the end of the event. We just wanted to be able to do some preliminary analysis here for you guys. So basically, we're trying to identify marketing and demand gen strategies that may be underutilized or are just now coming onto the scene with expanding technology and any adjustments made due to COVID and stuff like that. And the full study will be available here in a few weeks. We just want to be able to do some more extensive analysis on that and get all those results in. And if you have anything, as we're going through this, if you have anything that you want us to kind of analyze or any questions you want to have answered from this study, you can reach out to me or Professor Oldroyd on LinkedIn, and we can see what we can do there. So the first thing we looked at, just kind of a background, we had 13 different categories of strategies. And within those categories, there were 4 to 8 like specific strategies. And for each of those strategies, we asked people, do you use this strategy? If you do, is it effective? And if you don't use it, do you plan on implementing it in the future? And those were the only questions we asked for each of these strategies, just to try to make it a little bit more consolidated. So as you can see here, these blue bars represent the implementation of each of these strategies, and the orange bars represent the perceived effectiveness as reported by the respondents. And these are the 4 most implemented strategies throughout all the categories. So we have inbound calling, direct customer referrals, outbound calling / cold calling, and webinars. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at this is the gap between implementation and effectiveness for outbound and cold calling. So Professor Oldroyd, why do you think that it is so highly implemented yet so ineffective?
Well, it's a good question. I think a lot of sales organizations have processes in place to leverage these strategies. So they'll buy lists, and then of course, if you buy a list, what are you going to do with it? You're going to call through the list.
Right.
And so it's even though a lot this is the third most utilized strategy, about half don't think it's that effective. And so why, it just has to be legacy. We've been doing it, and so we just do it, even though, we'll show you later, there's lots of other strategies that can be utilized that have much higher effectiveness ratings. And so it just shows that I think people are stuck in a routine sometimes and stick with what they've been doing, even when we know it doesn't work.
Well, I think a lot of the times that's just the case because they don't know what else to do, right? Because I mean, if they had these options that were readily available to them and that they were well aware of, then they'd switch out, right? A lot. Do you? So I guess what I'm asking is, do you think that a lot of this is just due to some of these higher effective methods just kind of not being recognized?
Well, I think everyone recognizes them. The question is do they want to spend the time and energy and effort to implement them? And the reality is we know outbound calling works. I mean, the organizations that do it and do it well would swear they have great success with it. And there's variance among companies in doing it. The so I'm not saying to abandon it, but I do think companies should carefully consider where they're investing their resources. At the core of strategy is efficient allocation of resources. If you're doing outbound, that means you're not doing something else. And so I think the results here in this study suggest that it might be time to consider something else. What other activities could you begin investing your time and energy into? And we'll be able to show some of those that I think could be more effective.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Let's move on to the next one here. So I think one of the biggest discoveries right off the bat from looking at this data was how little physical events have been adopted in 2020 by companies, and obviously COVID has a lot to do with that. But I think even more interesting than the current implementation, as you can see here, it's only about 15% of respondents used physical events in 2020, and virtual events were almost four times that. And that obviously makes sense because of COVID. But like, why? If you look at the planned implementation, even the planned implementation is crazy low. It's under 10%. Less than 10% of people are even planning on doing this in the future. And I was expecting maybe like a bounce back. Maybe people would return to these events. Why do you think that this is the case?
There's some work by Thomas Kuhn on the structure of scientific revolutions. And what he basically shows is that in our minds, we have this concept that science progresses in a linear, uniform manner where every year a little bit more science is added on to our understanding and we get smarter. The reality is that's not at all the case, that there's these punctuated events that kind of change our whole way we think about things. It changes our whole paradigm. And I think COVID could be one of those events where, we've historically been reliant on physical events, and maybe we realize there's not that, we can get what we were trying to get from physical events from other activities that are much lower cost. Now, I do think we will see a bit more comeback than is showing here for physical events because if you're trying to build community, it's just there's almost no substitute for direct human interaction. But virtual events are getting really good. I mean, we're doing one today, right? And
Right.
there's lots and lots of people participating. And so there's just not going to be the same demand for those physical events that there's been in the past, because we've demonstrated now that virtual events can do a great job of meeting the needs of most organizations.
Well, yeah, and when I think about it, I think I like your point where if it's in the case of community building and stuff like that, being there physically together makes a lot of sense. But if I'm trying to just kind of soak in information, it doesn't really make sense for me to be there in person. If I can be, I would imagine that attendance and stuff like that would be a lot higher due to the flexibility of virtual events, and I imagine the cost of virtual events would be way lower as well, with no venue costs, no travel costs. Um,
Well, Tanner, I think it's a good point. It's not only the supplied side cost, but it's also demand side costs. Like, it's just a lot easier to explore a wide variety of events in virtual space than it is in physical space.
yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next one here. Okay. So this result didn't really surprise me that much. Just over the past few decades, how technology has influenced marketing, sales, really all ways of life. But from this graphic, you could see how the usage of traditional advertising is just minuscule compared to all these other strategies. It looks like it's about 15%. So 15% of respondents use some sort of traditional advertising, while all the other strategies average at about 50%. And when I'm talking about traditional marketing here, I'm talking about billboards, physical print, radio, TV, magazines, that sort of thing. Um, are you shocked to see it having declined this much? And do you think COVID has a lot to do with this, or do you think this is just kind of where it was going, anyways?
So I did a study a couple decades ago looking at the newspaper industry, and the trends have been in place for 100 years. Like print newspapers have been dying for 100 years. So I mean, to me, this isn't very surprising that that the media, these traditional media, are you know are so low. It's kind of surprising that they're still seen as 40% effective. Like 40% of people using them feel like they're effective. And I do think that there's, I don't think we should abandon these traditional marketing methods. They're perhaps being used for different purposes. So I know that a lot of recruiters will use billboards just to get brand awareness so they can get people to apply. So it's not, I don't think they're being used for traditional approaches like the lead gen that we've often, used them for. But I think there's definitely a niche for them to do well, like, and to companies that learn to do them effectively can find great value in them.
Yeah, that's a good insight there. Let's move on to where companies are headed. So one of the metrics we had survey respondents answer was, if you're not implementing something, are you going to be implementing this in the future? And there were a few really standout strategies here. So as you can see, LinkedIn Live, I believe there were only about 12% of people implementing it, yet like 30% of people had said that they were interested in implementing it in the future, which leads to a 200+% growth in usage there in the near future, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like that has a lot to do with COVID. Since I'd say in the past 6 months, I feel like even on my LinkedIn feed, I've just seen so many more of these LinkedIn Live things, and it even puts these other ones to shame a little bit. But we still see podcasts, ABM, so that's account-based marketing and account-based engagement tools, off-page SEO, video, and studies like the one we're doing. These are all areas in which respondents felt like they were headed towards.
So, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
to me, it's not surprising looking at this because I think at the core of all of these is human connection. And at the end of the day, we're all of us are a bit starved for the human connection. And so even rather than visiting face to face or being able to contact people face to face, these are all proxies for that. And we're social people. Humans are at the end of the day, we're social people. And so I think that it's to me, this is awesome. This is really cool to see that LinkedIn Live and podcasts and other activities that are really focused on establishing human interaction are where companies are headed. And the cool part to me is they're using technology to help them get there. And so I think we're going to see this nice amalgamation of the human element with the technological element to drive human connection in a more sophisticated, more detailed way than we've had in the past.
Yeah, and I mean, just like you said, looking at this, I mean, LinkedIn Live, podcasts, video, even ABM, where you're trying to better engage with whoever you're talking to. These are all very like personal connections. Whereas, if you're just looking at an ad or you're looking at like a white paper or something, these just seem way more engaged. And I think a lot of this probably does have to do with just us wanting human connection, and I think that has been perpetuated by COVID and not being able to have those physical experiences. So it's good to see technology kind of mediating that a little bit.
Well, and it's the shift to what people are actually consuming. So I was just heard a recent report that the Wall Street Journal hires 4 times as many videographers as writers now because every story is a video. Perhaps off-page SEO here is the only one that doesn't quite fit into that. But otherwise, this is 100% about connection.
Yeah. Okay, so these are obviously the areas where people are trying to head. The question is, have these been effective leading up to now? So, of these strategies, which one should be implemented? And on the y-axis here, we have adoption rates, which are all pretty high. Most of them are above 50%. So these are all the categories we saw on the previous page. And on the x-axis is how effective it is. So as you go to the top right of this graphic here, that means that they're both highly adopted and effective, whereas the bottom left appears to be less effective. So the first thing that stands out to me is how low podcasts in LinkedIn Live are here. They have both less than 65% effectiveness, whereas you look at something like video and studies, who have 75% effectiveness. And you can kind of see a linear trend here where the adoption and effectiveness have a positive relationship. But what do you glean from this?
Well, I think this is just we're kind of cherry picking here some of the where companies are trying to go and giving them some insight on where they might want to invest their scarce resources. The reality is LinkedIn Live. I think the adoption's low because people haven't been able to figure out how to do it yet. But the few that have are finding it to be quite effective. So I think we'll see a shift of all of these to the upper right as more and more companies spend time and energy and effort. Maybe cut some of the outbound calling energy and budget and put it into these. And I think when we do this again in the fall and then next spring and the following fall and a couple of years, we'll see those shifting to that upper right quadrant you were talking about. So I guess if the immediate takeaway is if you have $1, maybe perhaps the best investment would be in a study or video. But I do think that learning how to do those other things well is also we're going to see a shift in those.
Well, I think you kind of alluded to this, but I think the effectiveness is low just because there isn't that necessarily that common knowledge of how to do it yet because of how low the adoption is. So things like LinkedIn Live won't necessarily be ineffective in the future, but because people haven't really figured it out yet, it hasn't been effective in the past. So
let me put it this way: the student of mine that had the easiest time getting a job this year was a master of LinkedIn and particularly LinkedIn Live, and it was not a challenge for him to get a job.
Okay, so that's we'll go over a few just quick things here from what we gleaned, but the whole traditional marketing physical event realm seems to be kind of disappearing or dissipating to some degree. So take your budget, take your whatever you've allocated towards these kinds of things and put them towards the things that people are headed to, that are more technology based, that can help make more human connections, like these LinkedIn Lives, like these podcasts, these video engagements. Start heading towards those. And ABM and ABE, you've probably heard these terms. They're kind of buzzwords right now. Those are both hugely growing technologies out there. And then, like I said, following the industry adoption of webinars, those direct customer referrals it's pretty well known that those are highly effective. But do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, so I think it's I think the key takeaway of this study, and as we publish the full findings, I think that what it will do is help organizations understand, give them a roadmap of where people perceive value in all of these technologies, in all of these methods and strategies of marketing and driving business. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, and identify those that are underutilized and are very effective. And so, if you can get onto those earlier than your peers, it could likely lead to competitive advantage if you can get it and figure it out. The other caveat I'll just say is that these are averages, And so anytime we're talking in averages, I always like to just emphasize that you might not be an average firm. Maybe you're very good at traditional marketing, and that's been what you do well. And so perhaps you want to stick with it. I think at the margin is what we're good at. Is I think the study's good at helping companies at the margin who are thinking about change and thinking about the future and what they plan on doing. Yeah, I think you can gain some valuable insight from this study in helping you think about the future.
Yeah, great points. Great points. And like you said, I mean, as we continue to study throughout the years, we'll have data on this over time, so we can see how these things are progressing. So, yeah, we'll be releasing the full study here in the next few weeks following the event. We just want to be able to get some more in-depth analysis done, and just follow our LinkedIn. We'll be posting it there. We'll be doing a bunch of email sends for that. We'll be it'll be right on our site. So just stay tuned for that. We're really excited for it. And thanks for all the insights, Professor Oldroyd. Nice having you here.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, hope you guys enjoy the event. Lots of great speakers and sessions ahead. So have a good one, guys. See ya.